Today, we preview the 2025 Arizona Diamondbacks with Dalton Feely of John Boy Media. You're listening to the Bucko Banter podcast brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue the music.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plates, and in case after case, run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Fellas, welcome back to another team preview. Today we have the Arizona Diamondbacks, better known as the Snakes, and we're joined by Dalton Feely of John Boy Media. Dalton, welcome to Bucko Banner, man.
Adam Scott, thank you for having me. I'm excited. You know, some Bucko balls, some Snakes balls, where worlds collide. I'm excited to talk, man.
Absolutely. This is a team to get excited about. I was just telling you off air, I'm heading out to Arizona to watch some opening day weekend. Just like so much positive around this organization for the past couple of years. Obviously, the offense is great. They're adding to that staff. It looks like everything's going up. I know it's tough sledding out there in the West, but last year 89-73, third in the NL West. Let's go through some additions and losses here real quick. Just some notable ones. Obviously signed Corbin Burns, Randall Grichuk is back, Shelby Miller, Trey Mancini, Garrett Hampson. And via trade, they got Kessinger, Josh Naylor, obviously is a big one that they got. And then they lost Jock Peterson, Christian Walker, Josh Bell, former Bucko, Kevin Newman, former Bucko, and Paul Sewald. And then they lost Sessione via trade. How are we feeling about this offseason? How would you give it a grade?
You know, losing Christian Walker and Jock Peterson were two of the massive components of the Diamondbacks being the number one offense in baseball, which is kind of crazy and baffling to say. The Arizona Diamondbacks, like if you were guessing blindly which team led baseball in runs, I don't think many casual fans would say the Diamondbacks. And quite frankly, this offense last season was historic. So losing those guys hurt. But even with losing Walker and Peterson, it's a very good offseason for the Diamondbacks. Giving it a letter grade, I think I would give it an A-, maybe a B+ range. Signing Corbin Burns, massive move. A massive move, a la Zach Greinke all over again. Hopefully it pans out a little bit better than the Greinke contract did. But the biggest problem with the Diamondbacks last year was the rotation, and Mike Hazen and company addressed it in a big way, signing Burns at 6 for over $200 million. A fantastic move. Trading for Naylor, Walker's replacement. You get some left-handed power there too. I'm very excited, and I think the state of Arizona is excited for what the Diamondbacks did this offseason.
I mean, losing Walker was big, but then you replace him with Josh Naylor, who I think brings also this energy that you can't really quantify to the clubhouse and on the field. And then you bring in Corbin Burns, because I feel like 2 years ago when they were in the World Series, they were missing that third starter. Brandon Pfaadt had come up and he had shown glimpses, but now you've got Burns and you've got Gallen and you've got Merrill Kelly and you've got a much deeper rotation. How big is that going to be going into this season with the NL West being as strong as it is?
I go back to the old adage of you can't have enough pitching. And I think a lot of Diamondback fans, including myself, we all thought after the comments made by owner Ken Kendrick about Jordan Montgomery, saying basically, that's my fault. That was an awful decision to sign him. That's on me. We all thought, crazy thing to say, first off. And I don't want to glaze over that. But you make those comments, you think he gets traded, but Mike Hazen comes out saying, look, we need as many starters as we can. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of injury and health through spring training going into the season. So they have basically 7 starters fighting for 5 spots. It's going to be a competition. I'm curious to see how that shakes out. But you said about the World Series roster, you know how the Tigers last year had their pitching chaos to get into the 2024 playoffs? Well, the Diamondbacks kind of had that in 23 because they started an opener in the World Series. That is baffling that occurred 2 years ago. And now it's the complete opposite, where you have 7 guys who are capable MLB starters in that rotation.
You guys kind of had the Pirates' dream offseason, and I'm not even talking about signing Corbin Burns. It's sad because I'm like, oh, Randall Grichuk would have been real nice here in Pittsburgh, or Josh Naylor. So I'm a big fan of just adding to this offense. But let's go through the projected lineup right now on Fangraphs. Corbin Carroll, obviously, Ketel Marte, Josh Naylor, Gurriel, McCarthy. I know Scotty's a huge Jake McCarthy guy.
I'm a believer.
Suarez, Pavin Smith, Gabriel Moreno, and then Geraldo Perdomo. first glance, how are we feeling about this lineup? Is there anything that sticks out to you, or is there a weakness that we need to identify?
I don't know if I want to consider it a weakness, but one spot I am concerned about is right-handed power. Losing
Mhm.
Christian Walker, a guy who's a perennial 30 home run hitter. He got hurt last year, so we didn't get to that mark. That's a big piece to miss. And a lot of these power hitting players in Diamondbacks lineup between Josh Naylor, Corbin Carroll, Catel's a switch.
Yeah.
Jake McCarthy had some pop last year. These are left-handed bats, so they're going to need like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. to have a bounce back season. Suarez to continue from his second half he had last season to make this lineup be as good or at least close to it from what it was last year.
Yeah, I like to call them Jake Snakes. I know it's Jake Storiale likes to call them Jake Snakes, but it's also Jake McCarthy's Snakes. So
a lot of Jakes.
A lot of Jakes. How about Jordan Lawler? All right, this is a guy that I think he was out most of last year, wasn't he, with an injury? And he's been a top prospect, was a top draft pick a couple years ago out of high school in Texas. Does he eventually take over for Perdomo at shortstop? Like, what kind of role does he play on this team this year?
No, I think that's a very good question. Ironically, on the outline that we talked about, he was going to be the prospect to watch because I think it's a very intriguing storyline for Jordan Lawler this year. In my opinion, especially after Geraldo Perdomo gets that extension this past week, 4 years, roughly $45-ish million. They view him as the shortstop of now and the future. I don't think from an outside perspective, I can understand why people might roll their eyes to the Geraldo Perdomo deal. He is the heart and soul of the Diamondbacks lineup. And I know that's kind of crazy in that locker room, in that roster. And I know it's crazy to say, but Torey Lovello loves Geraldo Perdomo. No one was happier when Perdomo signed that extension than Torey. He is the heartbeat of that team. But going back to Jordan Lawler, I think this makes it a little bit more murky for his 2025 season. I'm curious to see if he makes the opening day roster. I don't believe he will. I think he's more likely to make an impact in 2026 and potentially be the starting third baseman if Eugenio Suarez leaves in free agency.
Ooh.
How are we feeling about the depth here? I mean, we mentioned Jordan Lawler, but on the bench, they have projected Jose Herrera, Blaze Alexander, Randall Grichuk, Alec Thomas. Is that how you see the bench kind of mapping out this 2025 season, or is there a name that you would add there that could be either make it out of camp or that could take everybody by surprise?
This is not going to be like a world-beating name, but Aledmo I always say his name wrong, but Vargas, former National, former Diamondback, comes back in a minor league deal. Ildemaro, I believe is how you say his name. I apologize. Ildemaro Vargas, I think, could make camp as a utility guy for the Diamondbacks and be like an all-rounder for that team. Garrett Hampson, Blaze Alexander are those guys like fighting for that last roster spot. I guess one thing to watch is if they carry 5 outfielders. You mentioned Alec Thomas being a notable name that could potentially be on the bench, and I think he will make it. He had his struggles last year. He was sent down. The bat hasn't been quite as good as it was on the 2023 postseason run when he had 4 home runs during that stretch. So I'm very curious to see if he makes the roster. I believe he will. And then the catching role is the backup catcher. Gabby's going to start. Jose Herrera is the projected backup, but watch for Adrian Del Castillo. He was called up last year. He made his mark. He's had issues behind the plate, especially throwing runners out, which may hold him to AAA Reno to start the year, but that's a battle to watch at camp.
Yeah, I like Del Castillo a lot, especially with the bat too. He provides some offense off the bench. How about if Alec Thomas's bat continues to struggle? Do you think they could just turn to maybe a Christian Pache? Because you got Randall Grichuk as your power bat off the bench. If you need a late inning defensive replacement, Pache is like one of the best in the outfield.
This guy can roam for sure, and I totally get it. But like both those guys, I think AT provides more with the bat, and that's not saying much at this current point of their careers. But Pache, man, like the bat is just so bad. The only role he would play if he makes the roster is a late inning defensive replacement or potentially a pinch runner. If you need that on the roster, I get it. I think Alec, like if you need maybe a clutch situation, I think he provides a little bit more. But that is something to watch for sure as well.
Is Grichuk going to slot into this lineup just anytime that there's a lefty? And if so, where are you putting him?
Yeah, Adam, I think you're right on the money. I think Grichuk is going to be the DH. It's going to start as a platoon with Pavin Smith. Pavin will play against the righties, Grichuk versus lefties. Grichuk is just a left-handed killer. He crushes. It was a perfect platoon last year with him and Jock. And I think that carries over for 2025. I'm curious to see how the lineup projects because there are some names in here too, like getting Josh Naylor. You hope Lourdes bounces back. So the top 5 is semi-set. I think he's like 5 to 7 in that lineup if you're facing lefty. And even on a day like you needed some rest, like you could slot Grichuk into 2-spot too, pending if someone needs a break.
Let's go through this rotation real quick. I mean, we kind of touched on it before, but much deeper. We got Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Brandon Pfaadt. Some honorable mentions, some guys on the fringe. Ryan Nelson's a guy that I believe in the stuff. It's just about honing that command. Yober Diaz is a rookie. Blake Walston, Tommy Henry, and Christian Mena, who I believe was in a trade with what trade was he in with the White Sox? Christian Mena was a big.
Dominic Fletcher, Canzone. It was Fletcher. And Canzone went to Seattle. I get the Dominic outfielders.
Yeah. Yeah. But this rotation's deep, man. Like, I'm assuming this is how you see it, playing out for opening day, unless there's an injury. Could this be one of the better rotations of baseball?
I do. I think it's crazy that the Diamondbacks won 89 games with their rotation having the 4th worst ERA in baseball last year, in a group that went with the Colorado Rockies, Miami Marlins, and the Los Angeles Angels. Not a group that you want to be with, right? So I think there's got to be some positive regression coming from this rotation next year into 2025. I think the biggest thing, too, is just flat-out health. There's only one pitcher in the Diamondbacks rotation that made it over 151 innings last year, and that was Brandon Pfaadt, young Brandon Pfaadt, basically in his 2nd year as a career starter in the big leagues. So you got to have Gallen. He missed a month last year with a hamstring. You got to have him start at least 30 games. Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, both missed a long, extensive time with shoulder injuries. They got to stay in the rotation. Dare I say, Jordan Montgomery, who's lost some weight, quote unquote, in the best shape of his life.
Here we go.
Time of year.
If he's slotted in the rotation, right? Like, he's got to be healthy and effective too. And then Corbin Burns, who, knock on wood, don't want to jinx it, but has been pretty consistent with being on the bump every 5th day. They just got to pitch. And I think if the health is there, they will be more effective in comparison to 2024.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of Jordan Montgomery, they have him slotted in the long man role right now. As you mentioned, I could definitely see him sneaking in there, but we don't have to go through every name in the bullpen. But the thing that sticks out to me right now is AJ Puck, because this is a guy who went back to being a starter in Miami, and we're very familiar with it because the Pirates opened up there last year and it was disastrous. It was not good as a starter. And then the back end of the year out of the bullpen, he's the best in baseball. Like, I think you could legitimately make that argument. He was lefty, righty, like he was absolutely dominant. How do you feel about him stepping into that closer role for the first time this year? And then is the bullpen on this team a strength, or do you see them adding to it going into 2025?
Am I allowed to rant for 30 seconds about a theory I have?
Absolutely.
Please, you got all the time in the world, man.
I think so. The bullpen's obviously very important for every team, right? I think we are coming to a point in baseball where there's a closer, a guy who's a 9th inning guy in those high leverage situations, but then what I call a jackknife guy, a guy who pitches in high leverage situations that may not be in the 9th inning. You're facing the top of the order. You're facing, 2 lefties, 2 power hitting lefties.
And Andrew Miller.
Yes, thank you. Exactly where I'm going for this. I think AJ Puck is very well suited to be a closer, but I think for him to be the most dynamic as possible in the Diamondbacks bullpen, I think you use him in the highest leverage situations if they're in the 9th or if they're not in the 9th. Let them pitch against using the Dodgers as an example because, world champions. Yeah. But they have Ohtani. They have Freeman, 2 of the best left-handed hitters in baseball. If you're facing those guys in the 7th inning, that could be a big spot in the game. I would want Puck out there and not use a middle reliever setup man. Whereas I think Justin Martinez, who is electric, I think he should be the primary closer. Use him in the 9th inning and be effective in that role. And AJ Puck, wherever the D-backs need you in a high leverage spot, you go out there and you get your 3 outs.
It's like Tanner Scott last year too with the Padres. Yeah.
My dynasty team agrees with your Justin Martinez take because he's one of my relievers right now. I'm a big believer. No, this bullpen is interesting because you got Kendall Graveman coming in too. He comes off a year away from the game, injured, and he has pitched in high leverage roles. Joe Mantiply has pitched quality innings. Shelby Miller has a lot of there's experience here. Then you got Bryce Jarvis, Scott McGuff.
Yep. Yeah. Prime dog.
Yeah. Josh Winder. I mean, you got some options here. So I think Arizona is really underrated in terms of arms from the rotation to the pen. I don't think they're talked about enough with a lot of the, best arms in the league. I think you should be excited about this rotation and bullpen.
I'm a little weary. I'm excited. Don't get me wrong, for sure. But I've seen the bullpen blow some big games. Paul Sewald was the guy until July of 2024, and then he won a historic run of just being the least effective closer in baseball. So fingers crossed that 2025 is a bounce back year for the rotation of the pen.
Yeah, we're all too familiar with the ebbs and flows of closers in Pittsburgh.
I didn't bring
right
up
now.
Bednar. I didn't do it. I didn't bring
Hey,
it up.
We saw it on your face. It's okay.
Listen, Dalton, he's in the best shape of his life right now.
Oh,
All right.
no.
And he's and this is going to hit home for you. He's working with Brent Strom right now. So
I like Strom.
Strom is good.
He's a very good pitching coach. I think sometimes ideologies may clash and there might be some disagreements,
Sure.
but he's still a very good pitching coach. And I think he'll hopefully do wonders over there with David Bednar.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk prospects, right? Because prospects are prospects until they're not. Obviously,
Sure.
we mentioned Jordan Lawler, but is there a guy either that can contribute this year or you're just looking at as a fast riser through the system to look out for?
I'll give you two guys. I'm going to start with someone who's been the exact opposite of a high riser, a fast riser, because he's a very well-known name, Drew Jones. Drew Jones, number 2 overall pick, the same class as Jackson Holliday. Holliday's already made his MLB debut. Drew Jones, not as much, has been slowed down with some injuries. There's been some concerns there. Started to ramp it back up at the end of last year, showing some positive signs. I'm very curious to see what his 2025 looks like, because at one point he was a top 100 guy. Can he get back to that form? Can he prove to be worth that number 2 overall pick? So I think that's very curious. And in terms of a high riser, fast riser, Gino Grover. He is an infielder. There's been some yeah. Mm-hmm. See, I'm good with colleges for football. I'll be honest. Baseball, I kind of get these guys mixed up. So that's well done, sir. I love that, Scott. But Gino Grover, in terms of camp, there's been a lot of positive reports about him coming in. He looks great. The swing's been there. So I haven't seen him firsthand yet, but I'm very curious to see what he does in 2025. He could be a potential guy that comes up if there is a potential injury that happens.
I got to mention another name too, because he was one of my favorite players in college, Tommy Troy.
Oh,
he might have struggled out of the gate a little bit, but I love his swing, and he was really good at Stanford. So that's another name that I'd put out there. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I love that. I'm curious to see for him too. The slow starts he's had. I think he's going to be a second baseman, not a shortstop.
Sure.
But I want him. He's an athlete. He's a stud. I hope he bounces back.
Absolutely. How about a pick to click this year? A guy that, is going to break out and he's going to bring the Diamondbacks to the next level.
I kind of alluded to it, but Justin Martinez, man,
I have written down.
And I know you're very excited about that, but I think he should be the closer. I don't know how Torrey and staff are going to use him. Is Puck going to be the closer? Is Martinez going to be the closer? Are they going to use Puck in those high leverage situations that might not be in the ninth? But man, he's a guy, pure eye test, right? His stuff is absolutely filthy. He gives me Johan Duran vibes in terms of when he is on the mound. He's got that nasty splitter. Duran's got that splitter, however you want to call it, however he calls it. And fun fact, Duran was also in the Diamondbacks farm system. He was traded in the Eduardo Escobar deal a few years ago. So maybe that's why I see some shades from Martinez in Duran too. But I think gets a lot of whiffs. Goes over 100. He's been pitched in big situations. He's only learning. I think Martinez could be a huge part of the back end of the Diamondbacks bullpen.
Real quick here, Dalton, before we move on, because Scott, as I mentioned earlier, he's a big Jake McCarthy guy, and that's one of his picks to click here. I'm not even kidding. It's maybe once a podcast, multiple times a week, he brings up the possibility of the Snakes moving on from McCarthy or packaging him in a deal, just so we get the other side of things right here. And maybe I don't have to hear Scott talk about it anymore.
He still will.
He still will. What are the chances? Has that ever been brought up where, potentially he could be a trade piece for this team?
Or one of your outfielders. You got a plethora of outfielders over there.
So it's funny you bring that up. It's been like a civil war in terms of the Diamondbacks community, because both Jake McCarthy and Alec Thomas's names have been floated around in this offseason and the past offseason about being potential trade targets among other major league clubs. For me, I am a Jake McCarthy truther, like Scott, so I would prefer him to stay. I think he's been more consistent in the major league level. The one thing I will say about Alec Thomas, he's been clutch. He's a fan favorite, so a lot of people don't want to see him go. I do worry about the bat being MLB caliber, but that glove, I truly believe, not using outs above average, defensive runs saved, zone rating, any of that, I truly believe he's a top 3, if not the best defensive center fielder in baseball, and that's added value in its own right. So if the bat clicks and you trade a guy like that away, that becomes concerning too. But I think I think McCarthy and Thomas, though both trade rumored, they're not going anywhere for the time being.
Okay. I'm sad for now, but when he's a Pirate,
how are you sad? I said he's not going anywhere. It's Jake Snakes. Come on.
I know. Well, I'll move on to another topic because I'm really sad right now. Give us to round it out here. Give us a prediction for the 2025 season. That could be player related, or it could be like season related. Or that our Diamondbacks going to make it in on the wild card? Are they going to go to the NLCS? What's going to happen here?
Well, I could give you some like clickbaity stuff where I say the Diamondbacks are going to win 100 games and win the NL West.
We're clicking that right there.
Right there, click it.
Yeah.
No, but I'll be unbiased. It's the Dodgers division until it's not. They've won it like 12 of the last 13 seasons for a reason. So I think they're going to win around 104 games, right? So the second spot becomes interesting in the NL West. I think I still think the Snakes are above the Padres. They haven't done much this offseason, whereas the Diamondbacks have improved. So I think Diamondbacks are like a 93-win team, 94-win team. Padres more in that 86, 87 range. And then Giants, then 20 feet of ground, and then Rockies.
Yeah. We still got our Rockies preview to go. We've done the Padres so far. We just knocked out the Diamondbacks. We've done the Dodgers. It's just like, it's electric for the most part. And I just love what they did this offseason because you mentioned like the Padres, it was pretty underwhelming for the most part for a team that was so close to being there that it was a lot of people's favorite.
It doesn't help that their family that owns the team is suing each other. So
never a good sign. Never a good sign.
Yeah, you usually try and avoid that. But Dalton, we appreciate you joining us. Where can our listeners find you?
You could find me on Twitter, dfeely14, Feely, no extra E, only 2 E's here. And then my full name, Dalton Feely, on Instagram, and then any John Boy Media or Talking Baseball stuff on socials.
Awesome, man. Yeah, Dalton, love your work and happy that we got you on. If you're ever in Pittsburgh, let us know.
Definitely want to come through. PNC is beautiful, and I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Scott.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates, or the steak by the plates. And